Hi there, and thank you for clicking on this video. We're going to be covering the Tennokan Prime drop, the Gotva Prime. This was certainly a nice weapon to get. It's not going to be any sort of a meta shift, but I certainly see a place in this in terms of a well-rounded arsenal. Um, Probably the nicest thing to say about it is this would be like a nicer version of for those of you that do like gunplay, uh say like an upgrade to the Kuva Carrick. Though obviously not one to one, but this does have an interesting mechanic where there's a small percentage chance of triggering a red crit, sort of like the Vigilante set. Obviously, multi-shot fire rate is going to boost the amount of reds that you see. The Godfa, we're going to cover a Nubro build, something that you've gotten to Steel Path, um, and more like a well-rounded Steel Path build. Once you get like the arcanes, we'll do like a level cap build, where it'd be the biggest multiplier to additional bonuses, the biggest stick you can wield, basically, the pure viral build, and sort of a modified frostbite build that I've been having some really good fun using. Definitely viable in Steel Path. And then I guess we'll make a comment about a potential circuit build, because that is going to change things because of the decrees and whatnot that you can get in the circuit. I think this weapon is going to overperform. That's probably going to be its biggest strength, is like using this in the circuit. Just due to the nature, as well as most other weapons, due to the puncture cold change, this weapon does really, really good with frostbite, and I think that arcane does really, really well in the circuit. I haven't had any issues with it. But okay, let's look at the space stats. It is a bit of an oddball for one thing. Um, it is pure puncture, so this is going to be a Grenier killer. But for base star chart for our new bros, we'll go ahead and get that build out of the way. So base damage, same old, multi-shot is our next big multiplier. Then we have crit, which is going to be point strike, vital sense. We're going to need an ammo mutation for that there. And this is going to be, I think you need one forma for this technically. But it's going to be Exilus and Arcane slot free. So fire rate. Ideally, you would want to do Shred right here. But you might not have this. So like a speed trigger is fine. You'll probably have a couple of these if you've been doing Star Chart just running around. But the first thing we're going to go for is just Viral. And then we'll talk about where you can upgrade it from there. So the main multipliers are going to be base damage, multi-shot, crit chance, crit damage, and fire rate. They're all more or less multiplicative, right? Um, Viral is going to boost through the status proc, is going to give you bonus damage to health. And because at um, like regular star chart, you're not really going to have to worry too much about an enemy's defenses scaling in. Obviously, the corpus can be a little annoying, but it's not going to be too big of an issue. But this would be a really, really well-rounded MR2, MR3. You're not going to have all of these ranked up, but if you are literally brand new and you're able to use this weapon, which I'm not sure about, but just in case, this is going to be something that you're looking for. The two Vs and the dash are innate on this, which is really nice, having 3 Forma. But this is going to be about as good as you can get. If you are looking for a weapon that is, it's going to be strong, it's single target. Uh, if you do have Shred, I would highly recommend it. and that'll help your kill times a little faster, even though the weapon does have 0.5 punch through. I've noticed with the tougher enemies, the literally physically bigger enemies, the punch through doesn't work just because of how much it takes to get through them. Especially like shielded enemies where they have like the shield on their arms, there can be issues. But in terms of like knocking down nullifier bubbles, I haven't noticed any issue. The fire rate's so high, it destroys them. And technically, speed trigger on this is more or less not required because the fire rate is 13 on its own. You're not going to have issues for a while getting ammo back with this. But our first upgrade, if you should get it, just to talk about like variations, like an upgrade path, is if you do decide to build the Exilis, do decide to, put one in, there are alerts that can give these. If you're doing Kuva Fortress survivals, you're popping Requiem relics, you can grab one of these without paying plat. This goes right here. And then I would say the next upgrade in line would pretty clearly be Hunter Munitions. Obviously, you're not going to have the polarity issues that I'm having. It lines up better with the other builds, right? So Hunter Munitions would be your next quote-unquote must-have. It does really solid damage for something that was kind of a freebie, let's be honest. So as far as like freebies go, this is something you can definitely, without too much fear, put a little bit into it, though I wouldn't suggest this be like a requirement for like a 4-forma build like I did. It was just trying to build the weapon out. So by the time we get to the level cap build, innately the weapon's going to be doing a couple 100k damage without too many boosts. So we're going to get some damage out of this. Now, the issue with this, and it was part of, if you watched the video from yesterday, and it was a bit of a long build, but that's kind of par for the course for this channel. And we've covered the topic before on modding for weapons with low weightings or no weightings. Specifically weapons, and it was the example, was like a pure puncture or a weapon where a Riven was able to take off. I think the example that I used for melees was I have a Riven for the Masseter that was able to eliminate the other status, so it's a pure slash weapon. Now, obviously, that's pretty good in terms of stack priority, but you are missing stacks in terms of like condition overload. So how do you deal with that? Well, eventually, as you progress through the game, you're going to get used to something called priming, but we'll cover that with the other builds. So this is more run around, shoot shit. Hunter Munitions, I would say, is pretty easily the next mod that goes here and would be a direct upgrade. I can't slot it because of polarity, but it kind of is what it is. So Hunter Munitions would go here. But okay, so going back onto the low status thing, and this is going to lead right into the next build, which is our Comfy Steel Path build. We haven't done anything crazy yet. It's a pure corrosive build with Hunter Munitions. Galvanized Aptitude, I haven't done the math per se, but I have compared kill times for not running this. To be honest, I still like running this because there's, when you're running like circuit and playing with allies and whatnot, when they proc statuses, it boosts your damage also. There's also like Viral from the Panzer, which is essentially the companion that you need a reason to take off right now. It's basically the Panzer and the Smida. If you're farming, go with the Smida. But if you're even remotely considering a long run, the Panzer and even maybe the Djinn is kind of the default, let's be honest here. Especially with its ability to heal a frame. So, Galvanized Aptitude, because we have Hunter Munitions, we're going to get our slash procs back. We're going to have Viral from the Panzer. You also have frame buffs, especially with like Helminth. Nourish is pretty readily available. and is a really strong helmet right now. And to be honest, just due to the nature of what it does, considering it gives you viral in your weapons, increases your energy regen, or it gives you an energy multiplier to energy being captured or recovered, however you want to say it, and applies to everything. It's just kind of a go-to helmet right now. So you're still going to have, with the Panzer passing its spores around, you're still going to have puncture, corrosive, viral, and slash. So that's still 4 statuses, which is kind of what you deal with anyway, -1. Because normally you have IPS, then you'll have your modded element, and then you'll have viral. So you might have like IPS, which is 3. You might run 100 munitions, but that doesn't add a stack that gives you slash procs on crit, right? Or slash status on crit. But it doesn't add a status. You might mod for corrosive, or maybe another dot if you like, so to go double dot with like a faction mod. But if you're not doing double dots, you might mod for like corrosive or toxin, depending on who you're going against. So that's 4 statuses, and viral would be 5 due to the Panzer, which is your normal condition right now. So we're only actually missing 1 status generally. Now, if you prime, it's just kind of par for the course. The status on the weapon, or the statuses that can possibly be procced when you trigger a status effect, wouldn't really matter that much. It'd be more about raw damage. But the build is essentially the same. You guys know base damage goes to the arcane. Vital sense is crit damage. Galvanized aptitude gives you status chance, and then direct damage per status type affecting the target. So this doesn't care where the status comes from, just matters what's on it. And galvanized chambers are a new multi-shot. If you have the login reward, Prime Shred, go ahead and grab that. That being said, do not pick this over Prime Sure-Footed, but should you have it, this goes here. Critical delay for crit, it's kind of the go-to. Tone the fire rate down, because we're starting to get into a pretty high fire rate here. To where we're emptying the mag, and we're so fast that reload time is kind of the thing that becomes more efficient to decrease. Not quite yet, but you're going to be reloading a lot. So 18, let's pull up a calculator real quick. So 84 divided by 18. So it would take us 4 2/3 of a second to knock our magazine down to 0. So then you add 1.5 is what, 6th and an 8th? Maybe 6th and a 7th? But then you divide 1.5 divided by 6.1, and we'll add a couple 6s. So we're actually reloading, if you hold the button down, about a quarter of the time. And that's with a merciless reduced reload at 1.5. So it is something to be like cognizant of. Obviously, nobody's really been maxing that much for like base steel path, especially with the multipliers that we have available. But again, just continuing on. So base damage, status chance, multi-shot, vital sense for crit damage, prime shred for fire rate and punch through. The punch through is a big deal. 100 munitions again. Critical delay for crit chance, and we've modded toxin electric. Still having polarity issues. There's going to be my build, which is going to make more sense why there's a depolarity here. So pretty standard so far. Not really going to have too much in the way of performance issues. Actually, let's go ahead and shoot some stuff. Now that we got Steel Path, we got our Steel Path 195 exos. You know them, you love them. They're the guys you beat up and test builds on against the Grenier. They're very, very tanky. First couple of stacks is going to be an issue. So slash ticks are a couple thousand. We're not really hitting 5 digits yet. And for base steel path, this is more than fine. We're still stacking. Alright, we got 12 stacks. Let's shoot this guy. Alright, so 4,000, 1,600, saw a 7,600. You know the deal. It's a couple thousand. It's a well-rounded build. No frame buffs or anything like that. I don't think I have anything on this right now. Yeah, unmodded Grendel. So no buffs or anything. We obviously didn't add Nourish, which would have further increased our damage. But the most thing that we're dealing with is because it's pure puncture, pure corrosive. You're going to look to take this against Grineer for raw damage. In which case, a pure corrosive build would be really good with, say, 100 munitions. Keep your innate damage multipliers pretty high. Though that being said, this wouldn't be appropriate for like a level cap build, right? So let's get into that. We are going to swap up our multiplier back to viral. And this would be a more appropriate level cap build. It's ready to be primed. This is just providing the highest damage possible. You can see the damage difference from the 105 to the 159. That's the prime cryo round putting in work. Obviously, the polarities line up a little nicer. You can do prime shred if you want. I like the vigilante fervor. I'm not gonna lie. This is very, very raw damage. We've got all of our multipliers on here. Primary deadhead, galvanized aptitude, so priming really, really boosts the damage on this. Galvanized chamber, vital sense, vigilante fervor, faction mod, of course. Prime cryo, infected clip. It's very much about the raw damage because we're going to be getting our status effects or our statuses from priming when killing demos. Critical delay for the biggest crit chance buff we can. Vigilante supplies, or obviously primed rifle ammo mutation. But this is a build that is dependent on priming and stripping. It's not rocket scientist. You've seen these builds a couple of times. And obviously our base damage multiplier is deadhead, and obviously that glorious headshot multiplier. So this just gives you the biggest stick possible, so when you start incorporating ability buffs, priming, this gets the biggest boost possible. And let's take a look at the damage on this. We'll strip some enemies, get a couple stacks, so you guys can see what we're dealing with that. We'll go ahead and actually grab 2. We'll nourish. Alright, we've got our strip. I'm actually unmodded. Give me a second. Can't full strip if you don't have the strength for it. Alright, it's this one. We'll take rage off. That's going to be relevant on the build that I was messing around with. Okay, so no buffs, or except for nourish, just further increase in our damage multiplier. Give ourselves a nice little buff. Nourish. Alright, there we go. 100k. 280, 297. No crits, everything's dead. 160k, 169, 200, 160k. Yeah, the red crits for half a mil. Little red crit for 830. So, you know the deal. The red crit's probably going to be the thing that you're going to be able to amp till you can one-shot something. It's all par for the course. But this is going to... But hidden for something that's essentially just primed with viral. And so what was it? Puncture, maybe. Viral, definitely. And a toxin proc. So, one toxin proc innate, maybe viral from the Panzer. We really didn't wait for it to spread. So maybe two statuses, and red crits were already hitting for 800k. So if you RNG one of those, gonna kill a demo pretty quick. So pretty basic. All right, so the more general build that I've been using, and we'll go ahead and put Rage back on. This is gonna be for people that have Arcanes. Now, normally you'll always hear me say throw acceleration on. We're going to use Rage for base damage. So on headshot, you have a 15% chance for 180% damage to primary weapons for 24 seconds. With as much multi-shot as we're going to have on this is super easy to keep up. But it's a frostbite build. I have been having a ton of fun with this. I'm going to show you how it kills on the exos, and then we'll do worst case scenario with some manic bombards. When we went over modding weapons for like weapons that have very few statuses on them, like this one only has puncture, right? It's like the Sea-Doo. Though it is obviously a negative in terms of galvanized aptitude stacks. One of the things you can do, and we sort of did it here, is we have tried to add as many statuses as we can on it. Now, if you notice, we're missing some stuff. Arcane Rage, where normally we would have our base damage on the Arcane, we went with a Frostbite build. If you don't have Arcane Rage, the kill time on this for base Steel Path, this weapon is so comfy at base Steel Path, and honestly, in terms of like where the damage is on this, it is very high damage that doesn't scale. Just to be clear. So this is going to be really, really strong, or it's going to feel really, really strong. Like 200 and below. So for running base Steel Path, maybe up to 500 when you start getting into like when the scaling starts to, you know, the top of the S curve starts to hit, and then the scaling slows way down. Because it slows way down. This is still going to be doing decent damage, but the big thing about this is that in terms of a Grineer killer, it's the raw damage equivalent of like a pure slash build, right? Since we're not really relying on the dot too much, we're generally going to be killing faster than Hunter Munitions can truly contribute in terms of a lot of slash damage. We're basically using Hunter Munitions to get another status back on, right? So where's the build? Like, where's our modifiers at? So galvanized aptitude, we covered that before. A little bit of status chance, direct damage per status type affecting the target for 20 seconds, stacks up to 2, so plus 80. Where we normally have a build that has IPS, and then you'll have like another element, or you'll do like, so it'll be like corrosive, and then you'll have, say like Hunter Munitions, so you'll do like a corrosive build on a weapon that has IPS, and then use Hunter Munitions to get the procs back, or the slash procs back, and then you'll have viral from the Panzer, is what I generally run for like a comfy Steel Path time, right? We actually have the right number of statuses again, so we get our status potential procs back. So where normally you would have IPS, which is 3, and then you'd have then you'd have corrosive, which is what I would normally mod personally. That's 4. Our dot would be hunter munitions. So we have our dots back, and then you have viral, right? So we have 5 statuses like normal before priming that galvanized aptitude is used to. So what do you actually gain from this? Because it is a bit of it's a weird build. It doesn't scale too well, but in terms of like base level steel path, this thing destroys. We don't have vital sense on here because of what the arcane is. And we talked about this last video with modding for puncture, cold, frostbite, and wouldn't you know it, this weapon basically ended up being like the perfect example of how to mod that. So frostbite is a direct replacement, provided you can get the status chance fast enough. A direct replacement for vital sense. So frostbite equals vital sense in terms of crit damage buff, right? It's 120. But the compensation that we get is I think it's 90. So 40 times 2.25, I think it's 90. Let's just pull up the calculator real quick. 2.25 times 40 should be 90. Yeah, it's 90. So we're getting basically an additional bullet, which sort of brings back the loss that we have of not being able to fit a proper damage arcane here. So what's the compensation? This build is going to require... I went with Arcane Rage on the frame instead of Acceleration because Serration gives 165 and Rage is 180. So this is a higher damage bonus. But Acceleration is 90%. And let me tell you, I think it's just too much fire rate. So even though technically Acceleration does do better in terms of DPS per second, if you will, I want the punch through. Acceleration doesn't compensate enough for the total DPS output of the weapon when you have this much punch through. The difference gets made up by having more punch through because it's an additional multiplier. And 2.7 punch through is a way more reliable hitting 2, 3, maybe 4 enemies at once. So that increases your total quote-unquote output faster. Because you have to multiply where normally you'd be doing single target damage. With this, it's as many enemies as you hit. Now, one of the things where it sort of like helps a little bit is puncture gives you a little bit of crit chance. And cold gives you a little bit of crit damage. It obviously slows the enemies down. And with the additional multi-shot, it keeps, even if you lose frostbite, you can gain it back almost instantly. And let me show you how quick this is. Alright, so 4 enemies. Alright, with no galvanized stacks, we're up to 40. In 40 shots, and then you just keep it up. So if you swap over to a pistol for a couple of seconds and you lose the stacks, you can gain them back so fast. But more importantly, it's not merciless. Like, merciless is the most functional in terms of like well-rounded arcanes, but the stacks fall off so fast. You regularly are killing enemies. If you're shooting into a group or you're using like a big AoE weapon, or it's like a big AoE slash weapon, like I have a corrosive Tonkor that basically is a hunter munition delivery system. The kills and the staggered deaths from the slash procs help keep Merciless stacked. Because this is single target, Merciless is going to drop down to like from 12 to like 11. But if you ever get in a situation where the enemies have scaled pretty high, you might not be able to keep Merciless up. So it is a bit of an issue, but the difference between this build and say like the Merciless build is that Aptitude has a really long time on it for a stack to fall off, 20 seconds. Uh, Galvanized Chamber, 20 seconds also. If you can't kill something, a single enemy in 20 seconds, you're probably dead. Unless it's like a boss fight. And even then, you're probably just using the wrong weapon. Um, I'm just being honest. If you're doing a survival and you come across an enemy you can't kill in 20 seconds, you've either modded incorrectly or didn't bring the right weapon. I know like acolytes can be a little tough because this has so much raw damage on it due to elements. Um, and there's a reason I'm using Grendel, so that'll put viral back on. So essentially, this weapon is puncture, cold, corrosive, viral, and then there's going to be viral from the Panzer. I've actually got a bunch of elements on here, and then there's slash from Hunter munitions. So even with all of that, we still got a bunch of procs and a bunch of base damage, or a bunch of modded base damage. So the damage is still going to be reasonably high. But more importantly, if like Frostbite it's stack based, not kill based. So it's like the difference between like new Berserker and old Berserker, right? Like old Berserker was based on what, like critical hits, like you had a chance. So provided you had enough crit, like it was always permanently stacked. Well, new Berserker is on kill, right? So with this, it's status based. The weapon has 64% status chance with this, and there's going to be so much multi-shot. You're going to get your stacks pretty quickly, right? Um, so let's see, because one of the things, and it is one of the selling points, is we even though the base damage is lower, we've gotten it up to an appreciable amount through the amount of elements that we have on here. Like the elemental bonus from Malignant Force, Stormbringer, Primed Cryo rounds puts in a lot of work. Is when you're going against the Grineer, where normally you would be doing like a viral Hunter munitions or a corrosive Hunter munitions with like a viral primer, you had to sort of rely on the bonus damage to Hunter munitions to kill enemies that have alloy. Well, with this is a way more general build, and it is one of the strong points. So if you're looking for something that's just running around the star chart at Steel Path, this doesn't really have a bad enemy. And that is like one of the selling points of this build, because you have cold, you get, and it's the 165 prime cryo. It gets plus 50% bonus damage for the 165 weighting. So the 41.3 will get a 50% bonus against shields. There are some corpus that have armor, so you're going to get a bonus with corrosive, Hunter munitions, and the cold will help against alloyed enemies, or like the elite units. So you're not going to take the damage hit that you normally would, where you're shooting like a regular Grineer unit, and then you shoot an like a elite unit with, say, now it's more relevant than ever, but say like an Overguard, and then you're trying to shoot like, say, like a Bombard. You're actually going to be getting a bit of a damage bonus against it instead of having to push through resistances and having to rely on the Hunter munitions getting scaled by viral, which we'll be getting anyway. So this is the build I've been running. If you want to mess around with it, it is a little more forma heavy than I was hoping for, but this is kind of par for the course, and it's trying to take care of the frostbite. So the final thing to cover is going to be the multi-shot. So obviously start off with one multi-shot, and then we get plus 0.8 for the base on galvanized chamber, and then plus 0.9 for frostbite, and then plus 30% multi-shot, which is a stack, plus 30% times 5, so that's going to be plus 1.5, which will bring us to 4.2 multi-shot, which is pretty fucking good. it's definitely not nothing. People buy God Roll Rivens because they have 100% multi-shot on them. And you're just sort of benefiting from it now. So this is where you start to recover some of that base damage loss. Um, I would say the running a regular arcane, like especially a deadhead, in terms of raw damage, it's going to be kind of hard to beat that. But for a build that doesn't require a faction mod, which under normal circumstances I would say is probably one of the last prime mods you pick up. But considering we have Barrow Relay, if you don't have access to it, those mods, all of those prime mods are at their absolute cheapest. And you could probably have like an alliance mate or a clan mate pick them up for you. Most people aren't going to charge you for the credits, but like, if somebody like is like, hey, I want to get this one mod, I've had them trade me the ducats, and then if it's like a clan or alliance member, just give me the ducats and that's it, right? But if it's like somebody I sort of know but isn't on the team, um, like an extra like gold part or something like that, whatever the mod is, right? Because obviously trade tax is a thing. But a 4.2 is a decent bonus over the normal multi-shot, so you start clawing back the damage you lost from it getting cut in half, but you're also gaining the bonus, and the other area where you gain your raw damage back is the primed cryo. Now, obviously, you can run viral on here, but personally, I'm just kind of tired of viral hunter munitions. I swapped over to corrosive a long time ago, and with the advent of like a Panzer running around, personally, it's a personal choice. I don't like running viral hunter munitions when you have all of the mods. Like, you should be able to mod better than that. Either go double dot with like a faction, uh, or run some other raw form. Like, now more than at any point in time, you could even put the base damage back on here. And you could even do like put the base damage here and get rid of corrosive because of the damage from prime cryo. Put crit damage back on and a faction mod. And because of the bonus to puncturing cold, it's not as bad as it sounds. Especially with the faction, and with the viral from the Panzer, it's not as bad as it sounds. It's still effective. So you have options with this, even if you just go puncture cold. Corrosive is me forcing it on. I like the general all around use, and the fact that I don't have to worry about faction mods. So in terms of a general all around build, this feels really good to me. So food for thought. If you want to try it, go ahead. I've been testing this for a while, and a couple 1 hour runs, absolutely no issue. And I think that's it as far as builds. Like, you can only talk about builds so much. The only other thing I would say is maybe if you're a Grendel enjoyer, there's probably a couple more of you now that there's a Grendel Prime coming our way. Um, Kind of screwed me over because I threw 3 Umbral mods on Grendel a couple weeks ago, thinking Gauss was the next one, and I'd get like a year usage out of having the Umbral mods on Grendel. I mean, it's fine. We're gonna get the Umbral mods back, but just from Teshin. But still, I was kind of hoping to not use those so quickly. But even going base damage and just cold using hunter munitions, and relying on the viral from the Panzer, put crit damage back on in a faction. We can use this one. All right, new bro build is gone. Sorry, getting some to drink. And Merciless. This build isn't as bad as you want it to be, right? This weapon has kind of needs the crit chance from the puncture procs, but the new cold bonus, and even though running pure cold isn't truly ideal, it does better against alloy enemies, obviously, and this will help out tremendously against Overguard, because Overguard doesn't care about damage type. Like technically, gas electric does the best against Overguard, right? Like because the Overguard doesn't care about the damage type or the status, or which damage type the status is producing, right? It's all apples to apples. Technically, gas electric does the best against it. So cold, even though this might not help you out as much against like regular Grineer, it's gonna be more beneficial against like alloyed targets, and they're probably gonna die against hunter munitions anyway in a couple of ticks because even at level 10k, trash mobs are still trash mobs. So it's really only the elite units you need to carry about. Everything else is just either annoying or something that, dies. So let's take a quick peek at these guys. Wait for the Panzer to come over here. Nice little backflip. Spit, cool. Alright, spread. Alright, our slash ticks. The slash ticks are, I'm seeing 5 figures, 6k, 3k, and 11k, a 20k. Let's get a couple headshots. 71k, 17k, 67k. Obviously, the slash ticks from the red passive, or the chance to red crit, on a headshot are putting in a lot of fucking work. Yeah, 83k on that. Alright, we got a couple stacks. Let's see a body shot. 21k, 8k, 5k, 19k. Yeah. 14k, 9k, 6.5. 21k, 4,700, 22k. So it jumps around, but the when that red crit hits, it's a big deal. And obviously, getting the benefit of Arcane Rage on that last one. So, it is what it is. If you don't have the Arcane space, I know a lot of you are running Arcane Energize still. If you feel that you need to run Arcane Energize, or maybe you don't have a maxed rank one, let's be honest here. Nourish is the go-to way to kind of fix that. It's a little bit of CC if you're willing to mess around with it. It's definitely the way to go. And it's just a good overall healthy, feels good Helminth. So it kind of is what it is. But this build also feels like a potential fourth build. Obviously, I'm not going to be using the Nubro one. So you would have the pure cold with like a Bane. Or obviously the faction mod could potentially be, I guess, maybe considered a flex slot in this for a more general build. Obviously, you're not going to run the Bane against Corpus. You would use the Corpus one, or maybe swap over to Toxin. But it's just, this is a really solid middle of the ground, like middle of the road weapon. It's pretty flexible because, I mean, let's be honest here. Impact, even though they buffed the execute, You're still probably not using it. Sorry. Even though they buffed the execute, the mercy kill on impact, you're probably still not using it. I do occasionally. I make sure the only time I really go out of my way to use it is if I'm using a sentinel. I'll make sure to take hard reset, but I'm probably using the Zacti as a primer because it's so easy to get the impact on there. It's got a little forced impact baby proc on it, and opens enemies up to finisher kills. Or it opens enemies up to finisher kills. So it's pretty comfortable for doing that, and that's sort of my go-to. But just because there's so little going on with this weapon, it actually ends up being a benefit. So one of the things, and this will be my final note, if you will, if you're running Nourish, you want to mod Corrosive, or maybe just go pure cold. If you're a Saren enjoyer, obviously you're not going to mod for Corrosive. You could still do cold, but just don't put like viral, or do either pick viral or keep the cold on and then go like the other build. This would be more appropriate for a Saren. Though, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend it because Saren on her Toxin Lash really does want these two mods to be swapped. So you would go the electricity one. I guess this would be. Hold on, it's not Jolt. High voltage. So I guess this would be the more general all-use one for like Saren users. Because even though there's the 10 stacks of corrosive, you still gain the benefit of running corrosive on your weapon, right? It's one of the self-priming weapons, like heat is, viral is, magnetic technically is, right? I mean, as long as the shield's up. So you can still keep it on there, but obviously you want that heavy toxin proc, or the toxin weighting, because obviously this factors into her 3. So that's really the only thing to consider. Anyway, I think that's about it for this. Questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment section. I hope this helps. Anyway, have a blessed day, guys. Oh, and tell me if the audio is better. I upped the mic a little bit. People were talking about the mic being low. I use headphones, so the audio is always way louder than it is to say somebody who uses like speakers, right? Anyway, have a blessed day. This video is long enough. Take it easy, guys. Later.